Well, folks, here we are again for the weekly forecast. Before we get to the main forecast, let's summarize what's happened during the last week. Of course, we've seen a couple of convective outbreaks across the state. One earlier in the week during the Monday time frame, which basically hit some portions of southwest through south central Nebraska along the Kansas border. And of course, we had a rather significant outbreak as we got into the Wednesday time frame that dropped thunderstorm complexes across northeastern and north central Nebraska, and then a secondary piece of energy developed across southwest Nebraska, and that complex rolled right along the Kansas-Nebraska border, with I-80 being the northern periphery of that convective shield. And of course, we've seen a little bit of activity start to develop last night in response to a cold front that's currently impacting the region. So overall, if you're fortunate once again to get precipitation, you're very welcome. If you did not receive the precipitation, join the club, because that seems to be the trend. Even when we do get precipitation, we're not getting widespread amounts, and unfortunately, we definitely do need the precipitation. Now, as we go forward in time, we definitely are looking at a slight cool down this weekend before the heat returns, but maybe this is a sign that we're getting closer to fall, as this is the second consecutive weekend where we've gotten a little bit of cool air into our region and at least get us cooled off somewhat. Now, if we could just get the precipitation to cooperate, we could maybe break some of these significant drought impacts that we're seeing across the state. Let's take a look at the upper air models and see what we might expect as we go through this next 7-day period. And as we go to the upper air models, I'll draw your attention to the upper air trough that's moving across the upper Midwest that has pushed a cold front through the state. So for today, if the models are correct, we are going to see some fairly cool conditions in north central Nebraska, probably somewhere in the upper 70s to very low 80s. And as you get to extreme southeastern Nebraska, most likely we're going to be looking at temperatures that are going to top up in the upper 80s. And again, we'll see the chance for scattered thunderstorm activity, particularly across the eastern half of the state. And as this cold front kind of blows through the region, we'll start to see an end of the precipitation during the afternoon hours. Now, by tomorrow, what we're going to notice is that trough quickly moves toward the Great Lakes, and we start to see the ridge moving its way back toward Nebraska. So we are going to see a bump in temperatures. For northeast Nebraska, we'll be looking up in the upper 80s. As you get into the panhandle, closer to the periphery of this ridge, we may see some isolated upper 90s across the region, particularly in the western half of the panhandle. Doesn't look like any significant moisture in store. Now, as we go to Monday, the ridge creeps a little bit closer into the region, and we could see some 100-degree readings across portions of the panhandle, maybe in the isolated spots in the southwest. In terms of eastern Nebraska, we'll be looking at mid-90s. Again, nothing in the way of significant moisture. Now, as we go to Tuesday, the ridge builds back in a little bit farther, and we bump our temperatures up even more as we go to the low 90s northeast to the upper 90s across much of the western portion of the state. And again, an isolated 100 wouldn't be out of the question. And there is some indication there might be enough moisture around that we could develop some very isolated thunderstorms. Now, as we go into Wednesday, we're going to see that ridge continue to build toward the north, and we're going to bump our temperatures up to the mid-90s across all of eastern Nebraska, with isolated 100-degree readings across western Nebraska, more likely upper 90s. And as we go into Thursday, again, that ridge stays right in place, maybe builds a little bit farther east with the core of the heat, looking at mid to upper 90s east to around 102 west. As we go into Friday, that ridge is still in place. We may see some moisture wrapping around to give us a chance for some more precipitation. Very isolated. We're looking at highs in the upper 90s across the east to around 104 out west. 8 to 14-day forecast indicates the heat will continue. In terms of precipitation, indicating a broad area below normal precipitation, but I will draw your attention to a tropical system, Ernesto, developing, is expected to move through the Yucatan Peninsula about this time frame, so it may indeed impact our precipitation chances as we go into next weekend and the following week.